told my company, MicroStrategy has invested 3,160,000,000. Yeah, I put another 175 million of my own money. So I'm
That's amazing.
3.3 something,
Love it.
3.35. I can't remember exactly. It's a lot of
Bitcoin,
money.
for those who never heard about Bitcoin, why are you choosing to put your money in Bitcoin and not in the bank?
Let's start with first principles. What is inflation? Inflation is when the government sucks the energy out of the currency. So if we go to an analogy that an athlete would understand, you run a dojo, and the government sends you a note saying, "I need all of your fighters to give me a pint of blood." So everybody donates a pint of blood. And to get ready for this, I Googled this and I found out that Google thinks it takes 4 to 8 weeks to replace your red blood cells.
Mm-hmm.
And you got 10 pints of blood in your body. So if you get bled 10% of your blood, then I guess you're not going to be the ideal top athlete for 4 to 8 weeks.
That's
right?
true.
And so maybe, if you had a big competition, you would not want to do that within 2 months of the competition, but you'd probably train a little bit weaker too. So that's about 10% inflation. Now, what happened if you got a memo from the government and they said, we need a pint of blood from every fighter every quarter, every 12 weeks?
That's
Now
gonna hurt.
you've got to like 25, 30% inflation, and now you're never really on. Now, what happens if the government sends you a note saying, well, we're going to need a pint of blood every month? So inflation is currency collapse. And currency is to the economy what blood is to the body, and value or energy is oxygen. So I'm sucking the blood out of your body. I'm sucking the oxygen out of your body. If I keep sucking the oxygen out of the room, you can't perform. When the inflation is running, the government says it's running 2%. It's not running 2% because the measure of inflation is a manufactured one. If I just measure things that don't go up in price, then inflation is low. But if I measure things that you want, like housing is up 27% year over year. The stock market is up 27% year over year. So if you wanted to buy a house or if you wanted to buy a bunch of stocks, the inflation rate's 27%. The currency is losing 27% of its value. That is 27% of your blood getting pumped out of your body. Okay, so what we had was a low inflation environment, and it tripled in March of 2020. And we went from maybe, 7-8% consistent inflation in the US to now 24%. And we've been running north of 20% for the past 18 months. So now a simple observation, right? You're an athlete. If I told you that everybody's bleeding, what's your first thing you're going to do?
Call the cup man.
Stop the bleeding.
Call the cup man. You got to stop the blood.
Stop the bleeding.
You have to.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the first observation is you got to stop the bleeding if you're an investor. And how do you stop the bleeding? Well, if you have all your money in a bank account and it's in US dollars, you're losing 15, 20, 25% of your value a year. But if it's in pesos in Argentina, you're losing like 40% of your value a year. And if it's in Venezuelan bolivar, you're losing 95%, right? They're literally getting bled every week. It's like the government shows up and says,
you could be the best investor in the game. You're still going to go out. You're still going to be out.
If you're in an economy with hyperinflation, it's the same as getting bled to death. And so in an economy like Venezuela or Nigeria, Zimbabwe, or most of Africa, that's a currency collapse, which is like you're on life support on a ventilator. There is no investment strategy or business strategy that will save you, right? You're in deep trouble. If you're in America or in the Western world, then your currency was getting weaker 6, 7, 8% a year, but now it's getting weaker 15, 20, 25% a year, depending. We can debate back and forth what the inflation rate, but the reason it's hard to pin down inflation is because if you want to sleep in your parents' basement and watch Netflix and order pizza, the inflation rate's not that high. If you want to rent a house, rent an apartment on your own, the inflation rate's higher. If you want to buy a house, the inflation rate is 25%. And if you want to buy other scarce assets, then the inflation rate is running sort of around the S&P 500 index. So if you want a surrogate for inflation, look at the rate at which a basket of 500 desirable stocks goes up in price. And that will tell you the rate at which the money supply is expanding. Or look at the rate at which housing, the Case-Shiller index went up 27% year over year, July to last July. It's running in that range in the last 4 months. That's the highest rate of housing price increase since 1987.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
So if you want to be rich, your inflation rate is the rate of the S&P 500. That's the cost of capital, right? And what the government says is, well, our CPI is going to measure things, but it won't include energy. It won't include housing. It's not going to include food.
It's not accurate.
Okay. If you don't want housing, food, and energy, then there is no inflation. But in what universe are you not going to want housing, food, and energy?
Exactly. Your money doesn't go very far. It doesn't do much.
Okay, so the first observation is, you got to understand inflation. And if inflation is the cost of capital, and the cost of capital is like the rate at which the S&P index goes up, which is about 27%, well, for us, for 100 years, S&P went up 10% a year. So for 100 years, it felt like 1/3 of what it is this last 18 months. So why did we get into this, into Bitcoin? Well, inflation is the rate you're bleeding. We have to stop the bleeding. We had a bunch of cash. We had a $500 million business growing 0% with $500 million in cash, earning 0% interest. And the value of the money is falling at 15 to 20% a year, which means shareholder value is falling, which means that, if you had all your life savings and you sat there and you lost 15 to 20% a year for a decade, everybody knows I can't just save all my money in a bank account yielding 0% interest and expect to put my kids through college or retire on that. In a decade, your money would get cut in half 2 or 3 times in value, right? So what's the strategy? You got to stop the bleeding. Now, what is stopping the bleeding economically? It means convert your currency into property that the government cannot debase. So, the Venezuelan government can print 1 million times more currency, but if you own a house, you've still got the house. They're not taking 1% of the house every week. Question is, what property do you buy? Do I buy a building? Do I buy a house? Do I buy art? Do I buy gold? Do I buy commodities? Do I buy stocks? Do I buy ETFs? Do I buy crypto? Do I buy Bitcoin? What do I buy? Something. I got to buy something with my money. They tell stories about hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, and management consultants are taking all their money and they're buying like a bicycle or buy soap or buy toilet paper. The toilet paper will hold its value more than the currency will, because at least it's still something.
I heard that goat shit was worth more because it burns longer than the money that burns. They value the goat shit even higher.
I had money in Argentina, and the currency was collapsing. It was like 1 peso to the dollar, then 3 pesos to the dollar, then 20 pesos to the dollar, then 40 pesos to the dollar. Now it's like 190 pesos to the dollar on the black market. And my lawyers and finance guys came into my office. They said, well, we got all this money. We got $1 million. I said, well, can we wire it out of the country? I said, no. I said, can we buy gold with it and carry the gold through the airport? No. I said, okay, well, can you just go buy a yacht and sail it to the Caribbean? They looked at me like I was out of my mind. But, like a yacht, a boat is also property.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so now why Bitcoin? Well, if you put your money in a boat, the maintenance cost is 10%. The boat might sink. It's expensive. If I buy a house, I got to paint it. It might burn down. There's leakage. There's property tax. It's expensive. It's expensive to maintain. If I buy gold, well, gold is losing 2% of its value a year because gold miners keep producing more gold. So in 30 years, your gold's worth half as much as it was, and then another half, then another half. So gold is gradually losing its value, but it's very hard to move around, and nobody wants to rent your gold.
Mhm.
Okay, at least if you buy a building, someone might rent it. If you buy a car, someone might want to use it. You might want to charter a boat, but you can't charter your gold. That's why people like property, like buildings and houses. Like, I'm going to Airbnb a second house and I'm going to get some rental income. That's the positive. But the negative is I can't carry a house on my back when I leave the country.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if I have an Airbnb in Buenos Aires, I mean, only a small number of tourists want to use that. So I've got a house. Who will give me a loan against it? Only an Argentine bank. Who will want to rent the house? Only an Argentine tourist. And then who will want to buy the house? Only someone that wants to live in Argentina. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's property, but it's highly expensive to maintain. It can be impaired, it can be taxed, and I can't sell it to a Russian billionaire.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.